Hey everyone, welcome to another interesting episode of Miller's Military Moments. I am your host, Jason Miller, Master Sergeant, retired. Yep, I'm retired, if you haven't heard already. So pretty exciting and feels great to be retired from the Army and sharing my stories with you. So welcome back to another episode. I've got a pretty exciting episode. Today we're going to talk about really kind of moving to the fall of 2003, and we're going to talk about the stop loss being lifted, what Thanksgiving and Christmas is like, being deployed, and especially the first year in Iraq. R&R, rest and recuperation, people getting to go home for 2 weeks. Guard duty, Friday night fights, and a little Porta Potty escort duty that I had to do, and it turned out to be one hilarious moment. So those are the things we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, just a couple of topics I wanted to share. The last few episodes have been just fantastic with Grant Belvin, and incredible to hear his story. So if you haven't heard those, definitely go back and check those out. It's a truly an honor to be able to share his story. And it's just a story that I really think that every American needs to hear. His, challenges in Fallujah 04 with getting out of the Marine Corps, and some of his low points dealing with PTSD, and then some of his high points to where he is now. So definitely great stuff. And, it took me, so we did some of Grant's episodes back to back because also I went out of town last week, spending some well-earned family time with my family at the beach, so I didn't make my own weekly episode, which is okay. But I'm back now and going to continue with my story. So a couple other things. If you are on Twitter, and I know a lot of people don't like it, I got off of Twitter for a long time because it's really, I call it like a dumpster fire. It's just really can be awful. But I went back a few months ago mainly for the podcast, and have really connected with a lot of incredible people and amazing people that not are only podcasters, but people that share their stories with PTSD, mental health. And also I follow some sports people and I enjoy that. So I've really worked hard this time at kind of keeping my timeline with the people that I want to associate and follow with. So, but anyway, the thing I wanted to talk to you about with Twitter is the new thing they have called Spaces. It's sort of like Clubhouse if you're familiar with that, but it's really different and it's better. If it's something that could benefit you as far as like networking, hanging out and meeting new people virtually, you can get, I think it's like between 10 and 15 people in this like space, and you can, as the host, you can determine whether people can speak, whether they can't. You can kick them out if they're being rude and mean. But I opened it up this week, and a couple of podcasting friends, we actually ended up in several rooms together. Pixie, so shout out to you. She's the co-host of Next on Stage 1, which is also a great show. All about strippers and adult nightlife in Denver. So there you go. Go check her out. Her and Mr. J, they're awesome. So, but we got into these rooms, and it really was really cool, like really refreshing. Made several new friends, and you could just literally talk about whatever the subject of the room was. And sometimes it'll deviate to other things. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, check it out on Twitter. And, I'm looking forward to using it more. Not sure exactly how I'm going to do it, but definitely looking forward to using it more and opening it up to, just talk to other people and meet other people, whether it's sharing my story, their story, or anything. So anyway, cool. Yeah, check it out. It's called Spaces on Twitter. And then the other thing, so my new project, I've mentioned a few times that I do have a new project coming up, and it's pretty exciting. So it's going to be another podcast, but it's not going to be just another podcast. It's going to be me and a co-host, a hostess, and it's going to be about, so I'll tell you the name of it is Table Talk with PB&J. PB is her name, which I'm not going to reveal yet. And then J is obviously my name. So Table Talk with PB&J, and we're going to talk about various things But we're also going to do a lot of it's going to be geared towards helping people, sharing good information out there, but also highlighting everyday heroes that are out in our neighborhoods, communities, cities, towns, doing amazing things out there. And we want to highlight them, talk about them on our show. And our hope is to actually even be able to raise money to, if they need assistance, if they need a hand up and not a hand out, but, provide them with something. And we're talking about first responders out there, moms and dads that are, working multiple jobs, that are just doing great things for their community, their kids, working their butts off to just make ends meet, and that are everyday heroes. I mean, these are everyday heroes out there that are doing amazing things for their communities. They're volunteering at food banks and all this kind of stuff. And many of those people don't have, a lot of the stuff that they need too. So we want to highlight them, and we're going to talk about them on our shows, and we're going to, provide hopefully at least some notoriety to bring some attention to their cause and what they're doing, and let people know that y'all are awesome out there and y'all are killing it every day out there, and we want to recognize you. So that's kind of the big new project that's going to come up, and we're going to probably start publishing episodes late July, early August. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Probably a weekly show, 30 to 45 minutes. And the topics that we're going to talk about are going to be, anywhere from communication, relationship, possibly some stuff, current news, but we're going to probably stay away from that, but mostly positive stuff. And how can we help other people? That's going to be our main focus. So stay tuned for that. Table Talk with PB&J. It's pretty exciting, and we're excited for it, and be pretty cool. So, all right. Anyway, so let's get into today's episode. So it's been a couple weeks since we kind of talked about where I am in my career for the show, and the fall of 2003. So I've been in Iraq now for 7 months. And, before the war started, before the invasion of Iraq, the Army had typically been on a 6-month deployment cycle. So anytime you would deploy, you'd go for 6 months. But when we went into Iraq, we didn't know how long we were going to be gone. And, they always tell us, well, we're not going home now. We're not going home now. And, finally in the fall, we got the word that, look, we're going to be here 12 months. So we're not leaving until, March. So that was, kind of a morale buster, in a way, like, gosh, man, how am I going to deal with being away, from home and my family and stuff for a whole year? So, definitely, just, really tough. But now that we know that, sometimes it does kind of help to kind of know, because then you can just kind of put your head down and, get back to work and do your thing. So, we were working hard, definitely working on the helicopters. Again, we were doing phases, and we have, on the Black Hawk side, we have 2 in, and we have 1 on the flight line. It's kind of like our cannibalization bird, where we're taking parts off to get number 1 out. And remember, our Black Hawk battalion only had 16 Black Hawks, whereas now they have 30, in the aviation brigade. So we were a lot smaller then, and so they're flying a lot more, and we were having to do a lot more maintenance. So it was a lot of work for us to keep up with that, plus some of our other extraneous missions that we had to do as far as convoy security with our vehicles and weapons, and also recovering downed aircraft, which I did that episode a couple weeks ago about. So, we still have all those things going on. But, so come October, stop loss gets lifted. Now, for those of you that don't remember or don't know what stop loss is, there were people that were supposed to get out of the Army, meaning their contract was up, either during the deployment or right before we invaded Iraq. And the Army said, whoop, stop, hold on. You are not getting out of the Army, and you're going to deploy with us. So they extended their contract. They deemed it national emergency, used whatever rules and laws that they could to make them force people to stay in that they needed to stay in. So we had one of those soldiers in our platoon on the Black Hawk side, and so he had to deploy with us. So it's definitely kind of interesting when you have those people with us that could have been out or should have been out, and maybe they don't want to be there. But, this particular soldier was, a professional in every manner. And he was great. I mean, great teammate, really good on the aircraft, and actually suffered some pretty significant injuries while we were there. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned him earlier. He was the one with that ended up getting 2 hip replacements. One before he got out when he got to go home, and then another one after he, left the Army. So injuries caused by that deployment in 03. So if he wouldn't have had to deploy, he wouldn't have had 2 fake hips by 24 years old. So the Army says, okay, in like October, stop loss is lifted. And then they gave them options like, hey, you could go home, you can stay here through the end of deployment, we'll pay you X number of dollars, whatever the case is. So our soldier said, our teammate was like, hey, I'm out, man. Like, it's time for me to go home. I've done my time. And so he chose to go home. And I think there were some others within our company, but, as a junior soldier, I was, there's 350 people in our company. I didn't know all the people and what they were doing. So I think there were others, and I believe that most of them chose to go home too. So it was kind of interesting, now they get to kind of get let out of the Army. And, for us though, on the other side is one, he was a good teammate and good friend, and the other, he was a good mechanic. So it's like, we're losing a really good guy in our team. So it's a little bit frustrating, but we all supported it and totally understood. We're like, dude, we got this, man. No worries. You do your thing. So that happened. And then, around October, and then something else that started to pop up was the whole R&R. So rest and recuperation, thought and concept. And so the Army was like, well, how can we, is there a way that we can get people home for a couple of weeks and then come back to theater kind of like a mid-tour break, or something, of that nature. And so at first they started, because, logistically they weren't sure if they could get everybody there. So like the word kind of came down that like, okay, we're going to try to get some people home, but it's going to be like the priority besides the stop loss people that are going home first. And then the priority is going to be, people that had children born while we were deployed and hadn't seen their kids yet, or there was some other family, special event that they wanted to go back home early to be a part of, or something like that. So those were all prioritized. And, I didn't have any of those situations. My son was healthy, and all the early stuff that happened, early on, we knew he was good to go and okay. So I didn't fall into that category of, needing to go home. So, was I disappointed? Yes, of course. The opportunity to go home and see my wife and son, who I had only been with for 5 months, it would have been a really great opportunity. So, but, like as, anything, we just kind of deal with it and roll with it. I can't, let that, change my daily thought process, my focus on my job, my teammates, everything else. So you just kind of, move on, and you can't let any of that stuff get you down for long periods of time. So they started with that, and then they kind of moved into a lottery system, because the logistics, started to move a little bit better. So we were able to get, more people out. And interestingly enough, how we did it, some is we put them in trucks and actually drove from Camp Spiker to Balad and another air base, and then they got on airplanes from there, Air Force planes from there down to Kuwait, and then would fly out to back to the States. So, and then come back. But after kind of 03 and really half of 04, the roads got too dangerous and everything started moving by air. But so they started a lottery system, and but with no promises of being able to get everybody out. So I can tell you that I was the last one. I'm pretty confident. I think this is how it was. I was the last one in my platoon. I don't know about the company, to go or to get selected. So I really didn't know if I was going to get a chance to go, because only so many people can go at a time, right? So if you start pushing the timeline up to, November, December, January, well, we're coming home in March. So there's a certain time where it gets stopped and no one's going home. You've got to be there to help, get all the gear ready to come back home. So, the closer we got, it was just like, oh man, I don't really know if I'm going to get to go. And then, but at the same time, it's getting closer to going home. So you just kind of keep that in mind. But I did get a chance to go home, and I think I left Iraq the day after Christmas. So I spent Christmas in Iraq, but I left the day after, and I think I got home back to my family, in a couple days. It didn't take too long, and then I got to spend a couple weeks with them, and that was, some of the greatest 2 weeks of my life, being able to come home and see them. And, so the first week is great. I tell you, the first week is always great because, when you're excited to be home, but then you don't have that pressure and that doom feeling of, oh, I got to go back. I got to go back. The second week is a little bit tougher, and it that day that you got to go back starts to get closer and closer, and then the emotions start to come out, and it gets really tough, and especially for the kids and with the kids. And it's I only had the one kid, and he was young, and it was so good to be there, but he didn't take to me right away either, so that was a little bit rough. And then here I am, 2 weeks, I got to go back. So it was tough. I was very fortunate, felt, great to be able to go back, and I would still do it again. And I did that 2 other times. And it was, the coming back part is just so hard. I mean, leaving them and coming back to, Iraq, was just so hard. But I did it, and, made it, and would absolutely do it again. So I did get to do that. Now, there was a friend of mine, he didn't come back. So some of y'all are wondering, like, well, did people just not come back, and what happened to him? So he didn't come back, and, you've probably heard of AWOL, absent without leave, or deserters, and there's all kinds of rule changes, rules that come into effect if you're in a combat or, at war during that time. And this guy was a former Marine, actually, that had transferred into the Army. So he didn't come back, but he did come back to the Army within, I think, 30 days. So they didn't consider him a deserter. He did get charged AWOL, and he got some pretty severe punishments, and then got booted out, shortly after we got home. So, but most people that I know came back. So came back to do their job, be with their teammates, and do what they're supposed to do. So, yeah, so R&R, definitely interesting. So Thanksgiving and Christmas, so the Army, and really military in general, does try to do what they can to make those holidays special for us, when we are downrange. Now in 03, it's a little bit more challenging because the facilities aren't as built up, and, it's not as easy to have, big dinners and cook all this great stuff. You can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the pictures that are, the images that are sliding by of some barbecues and things like that. So we would do that often. We would be able to get a bunch of food, whether it be hamburgers, hot dogs, stuff like that. And we would, maybe have some time off to kind of relax and, hang out with each other and have some food. And then as the chow halls got built up and got better, especially around Christmas time, I think they started to prepare, bigger meals and had all the decorations and stuff like that. So, we did that. And then most of us would try to take some time to, call home, or even write extra letters, to different family members or something like that. So for us in Iraq in 03, our communication started getting a little bit better, really kind of that fall, where we had some ability to call home on somewhat regular basis. And we had computer access, internet access, and email. So that was good. And I even think there were some webcams so we could, see each other a little bit more. So it's, so sometimes you're kind of off work. Like, they may say, like, we don't have to quote work. And that's an aviation thing for sure. Could be other support services. I'm not, the guys that are doing foot patrols or doing, stuff like that, they absolutely may have to be doing their thing. But sometimes, they tell us and we don't have to work that day. Everybody gets to kind of relax, maybe sleep in, and then get some good food and hang out with everybody. And you can, again, see in some of these pictures in the slideshow, everybody kind of hanging out. And some of the things, the buildings there you can see are buildings, the wooden structures are things that we built ourselves. We were able to get a whole bunch of wood and build, MWR buildings and build areas that, to hang out in, and even more office space and stuff like that. So you can see those in the slideshows. Anything to just kind of make it a little bit more comfortable for us. So, another thing you can see in those pictures there are, and those of you that are listening, some of the pictures are, they have Washington, formerly known as Washington Redskins. It's now the Washington football team. Their cheerleaders came over on a USO tour, and they were at Camp Spiker, and we got to take pictures with them, and then they came and performed a few dance routines and kind of entertain us through the USO, which does a great job of bringing all kinds of entertainers, musicians. Bob Hope is one of the most famous USO supporters, and would come over and entertain the troops forever, right? So they still continue that, and this was one of those opportunities where they brought some of the cheerleaders over to do some dance routines and entertain us a little bit. So, and definitely through the holidays, we kind of had some of that, which was great. So let's talk about, guard duty. Okay. There's really three guard duties that we had to do while we were there at Camp Spiker. One was an actual observation point, and it was essentially like a bunker, and there's a picture of it in the slideshow that's going through. There's a bunker that looks like any other kind of like bunker that you've seen in a war movie or in books or anything like that, it's got cover, it's got camo over it, and a couple soldiers inside of it, and we can look out and see in the distance, and we have binoculars and our weapons there and a radio. And so we would have to do shifts, I think it was maybe 4-hour shifts, 2 at a time. And then, they just rotated through however many people in our company. And I think I had to do it a couple of times. But, so you would look out and just make sure no one's coming to the perimeter, essentially. And then, if they were, you'd have to call it in the radio, and, no one ever had to fire from it. So from Camp Spiker. One of the things about Spiker was it was really wide open around us, so it's hard to sneak up on us, so to speak. I mean, you have to travel, across wide open desert area to get too close to us. So, which was good for us. So I had to do that a couple times, not too many, and not too many. And part of the reason is because, as a Black Hawk mechanic, we were so busy that the command made a decision that they would not take us off the aircraft very much, because we just needed to keep working. And if you were to take us off the aircraft, it could delay the aircraft getting, fixed and maintained properly and getting out quick enough. So unfortunately, that meant some of our other teammates had to do it more so than us. Sometimes that causes, a little bit of animosity between us. But the other part is, it's not our fault that they don't have any work to do. And a lot of times that's what it was. They just didn't have a lot of work to do. And that happens in certain jobs in aviation. So they have to go and kind of do a lot of that stuff, the guard duties and, kitchen police and, whatever the case is. So, but yeah, we didn't have to do it too much. I think I did that one twice. So, the other one was when we would have events, which I'll talk about next, one of our Friday Night Fight events. We would have to, because we'd have so many people there, we would require an extra perimeter kind of security detail, and we would just kind of be roving around to make sure nobody was coming up close and, accidentally got in the perimeter and, could throw a grenade or something that was real close and hurt a lot of people at once. But, so I did that a few times when the fights were going on. And then the third one, though, that I didn't like it, and this wasn't fun because it was all day long, but the one time I did it, It was hilarious. So we had to do escort duty for the Porta Potty cleaning truck. So it's the shit sucker truck, it's got the big tank on it, and they have the hose, and they go and clean out all the porta potties, right? So, later in the fall, we had finally gotten some of those porta potties that would get serviced, and, so we didn't have to burn shit anymore. So that was nice, and we definitely appreciated that. But these guys that performed the service were coming off of Camp Spiker. They were locals, sometimes called third country nationals, meaning they were not Iraqis, but they were local businessmen, trying to do a business. They would get vetted, and, but we still had to escort them. So we're in another vehicle following them around, and Spiker's so big that it takes all day to do it. So the funny part is we're doing this, and we go through the first half of the day, no issues, not a big deal. And we break for lunch, and then we come back after lunch, and there's two guys running the truck, and they switched roles. So it's like, I think one guy was working the pump or something, and one guy's at the end of the hose, within the porta potty, making sure, it gets up everything. So the other thing to point out too is these individuals, like many people in that part of the world, wear, sandals, and then they have just like, it's almost a robe. I just call it like a robe, a one-piece clothing, because it's hot, and that's how they stay cool over that. But it's enough to protect their skin so that they don't get, sunburned, even though they're typically, brown-skinned, dark-skinned people. But they can still get sunburned. So I point all that out because the very first stop we make to, hit the next porta potty, I said they switched roles. Well, they didn't communicate properly enough, and we're sitting there, and, the guy is, getting ready to take the hose over there, and he hits the switch. Well, instead of sucking, the stuff up, it started spewing. It was pushing it out from the truck everywhere. I mean, it was like, shit was going everywhere. And of course, this guy freaked out, and we're like, what the, like, turn it off. And it was, I don't even know, Laurel and Hardy, Keystone Cops, like whatever, you want to remember. But it was like they were arguing with each other while it was still spewing everywhere. They were like, the hose was going everywhere. It was all over their feet. It had hit their feet in their sandals. Everything. It was going everywhere. And they're like yelling at each other, blaming each other. And still, then finally, probably about 30 seconds. I will exaggerate and say it felt like forever, but probably good 30 seconds. They finally shut it off. And then, talked it over and got mad at each other and figured it out or whatever. But we were dying. I do not remember who was in the truck with me, but we were dying. That was just hilarious. Like, I'm sorry that I'm laughing that you guys got shit and whatever else out of those porta potties all over you. And I hope you got some really good baths after that. But it was hilarious. And just one of those moments where I needed a good laugh, and I probably laughed a lot harder than maybe I should have, or a lot harder than more funny than it was. But it was hilarious. And just, of course I felt bad for him afterwards, but it was like, oh my gosh, what idiots, but, so that was, I only had to do that duty one time, but, at least I got a good laugh out of it. And, but yeah, it was pretty funny. I'm sure they were disgusting and felt gross afterwards. So yeah, so that's guard duty. Move into, so Friday night fights. So I mentioned that, and Friday night fights was something interesting because so again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the pictures of a boxing ring and people actually boxing. And that is in our company footprint right behind the hangar, actually, where we were working on helicopters. And you can see our trucks and stuff back there. So, and you can see basically the gym is outside next to it. We didn't have like a building for a gym set up, or anything fancy like that. So you're working out outside, and it's hot as hell. And, but so somebody had made a boxing ring. I don't know who did it. I mean, but somebody did. And then they got some gloves and they got the face protections and they were working out. And, if you know anything about fitness or boxing, it's like a pretty, you've got to be really fit to do it. And then if you're doing it for exercise, it can get you really fit, keep you in shape. So, these guys were doing it and messing around, and somehow it turned into, some other people on Spiker, like they wanted to have like a little competition. A lot of people in the military, especially in the Army, they love competing against each other, especially when it comes to physical things. Wrestling, fighting, shooting. I can do it all better than you, right? I'm the best. We're a lot of type A personalities. So, it started to evolve, and I didn't pay much attention to it, to be honest with you. It wasn't my thing. I'm not going to, I don't want to go fight my own dudes. And so they started doing it. Well, it started to grow. Like more and more people were kind of showing up. And then it turned into where there was enough people that they said, you know what? Let's like schedule this. Let's like create an event. So that's what they did. They created like, hey, in 3 weeks, we're going to have, a competition for everybody on Camp Spiker or whatever the case was on this Friday night at this time. And they did, man. They brought all these people. And I think the first time there might have been, 50 to 100 people watching, which was still kind of a lot. And it was pretty exciting. And then they did another one. And then the next one was like several hundred people watching. Like, everybody was there from Camp Spiker. It was like, holy cow. And so that was the other guard duty I mentioned. Like, we have to kind of do a roving guard to like protect, because if you have all those people in one place, you don't want them to be able to get hurt. So it just like kind of started growing. And people were so excited about this. Like, they were like, couldn't wait for Friday night fights. And then they were recognizing like the people that were going to fight. And they were like, oh man, that guy's good. Or, oh, that guy's going to get him, and stuff like that. Well, then it even evolved to a couple of our fighters went to another base, actually went to Balad, Camp Anaconda, and fought people over there for, just amateur fights and in other units and stuff. And I think they even may have gotten some awards for this and stuff. But the biggest thing that came out of this was, so again, we're in the fall, and we have been told, we're not going to be going home till March because we're going to be here for a year. So morale's, an issue. Our commanding general for 4th Infantry Division at the time was General Odierno. And if you aren't familiar with General Odierno, one, I'll tell you, he's a soldier's leader. So I, all the way down at my little bitty level at that time as a junior soldier, felt like I could feel his impact as my commanding general. Like, I felt his orders, I felt his support, I felt, all the way through the commanders, all the way down when they would tell us things. Like, I felt like, he was telling us, approving it, whatever the case is, supporting us, and he was there for us to do the best that we could, and he would do everything he could to take care of us at the same time. I really did feel like that. And, he ended up spending years in Iraq, really, throughout his career, as he went from a 2-star at that point to, a 3 and a 4-star. And he became one of the leading, really, I guess, tacticians, technical experts of fighting in that area. So he held so many different positions, but spent several years in there. So he came to one of the Friday night fights. And, so a lot of times, like, look, when generals come places, sometimes it's a pain in the ass. It's because it's a dog and pony show. We've got to like do all this cleaning and make it look like we don't even work there. And it's dumb. Like, we have to do so much dumb stuff that it's, it just doesn't even look real. And of course, when people talk to him, they don't tell him the truth. And it's just, they tell him what they think he wants to hear. Well, so first of all, General Odierno will see right through that, and he will tear you up. If you are not telling him the truth, like he will sense it, and he'll be like, no, tell me the real stuff. I'm not mad at you. Let's fix it. Let's do whatever we got to do to make it right. So we did not have that feeling when he was coming. And we're like, oh, cool, this is going to be awesome. So he comes, and there's, I don't even know, I'd be 200 to 300 people, 400 people, I don't know. There was a lot, okay? And it's loud, and he pulls out this satellite phone and calls some senator back in the United States who had, I guess, had been hearing about complaints from family members or even soldiers and service members about, morale being low, they're going to be there too long, and all this kind of stuff. And he says, hey, sir, I want you to hear how low morale is here at Camp Spiker within the 4th Infantry Division. And he just held up the phone, and, everybody was just, rowdy and ruckus and loud. And it was, a pretty, chill bump moment. It's like, holy cow, it's pretty exciting. And he's talking to a senator and saying, look, we do have high morale, and we're doing just fine. Don't listen to all those negative people. So that was really cool. Cool moment for everybody. And it did continue. The fights continued for a while until I don't even know till when, but maybe December or so, until we kind of started getting ready to rotate out. And then I don't know if the next units continued it or whatever, but it was a big deal. It really was, and a big deal for the CG to support it and to be able to kind of get that message back home that, hey, our morale isn't too bad. We're doing okay, and we're hanging in there, and we're doing our job, and we're doing the best we can, and we're going to come home, as soon as we can. So that was really cool. And, all those events were kind of a synopsis of the fall of 2003. We got a little bit of rain, which was interesting, in the desert, not a whole lot, but a little bit. You can see in one of the pictures, and on, if you're watching on YouTube, the pictures with the little bus behind the Black Hawk, you can see how wet it is out there. And so we got a little bit of rain, which was kind of cool. The temperatures did drop, so we actually had to wear some, snivel gear a little bit. Our, so sleeping in the tent actually got kind of chilly. So all we had was a window unit as like a heater / AC thing. And often I was the first one up in the morning in my tent, and it was frozen over in the morning whenever I got up. So I would knock all the ice off, and get it defrosted so it could at least come on, and hopefully be a little bit warm for everybody else when they got up. But, and so it was kind of chilly, in the mornings, probably 40 degrees, and, working through the winter time. And you can see in some of those pictures too, a lot of people have coats and stuff on, especially when the cheerleaders were there. But so definitely, some other challenges with that. And then we, had like a warming area when we were working on the aircraft. We had like this little space heater in another little building inside the hangar. And so we would go in there to warm up when we needed to. Dude, I'll tell you, because when you're working on a helicopter, whether you're working, out of your 12-hour shift, you may be on it a few hours, and off of, you got to do paperwork and stuff like that. But when you're on it, trying to get your fingers, if they're like really cold, in small tight spaces is, oh my gosh, it is so hard. And it sucks. And then another thing we do, as aircraft mechanics, so we have on the hardware, we have these, we call them cotter pins that they're multiple sizes, and they're, a couple inches long to, kind of really narrow, thin, and they slide in the hole through the nut and the bolt, and you got to bend them, around the nut, and you clip them with, tools, wire cutters or whatever. And so trying to work with those things when your hands are frozen is like, oh my gosh, it sucks so bad. So you try to warm your hands up, over there, and then come back and do some. And then same thing if you're doing safety wire, because you've got to use a safety wire and you've got to twist it, and then, it just, so it hurts your hands. And so that definitely was kind of challenging through the winter. But, hey, we did it. Did what we had to do to make it through. And, honestly, we did a pretty damn good job with the new soldiers we had, including myself, that didn't have a whole lot of experience to where we were, especially that fall and end of the winter, fixing those helicopters. And it was amazing. And really, that maintenance experience right there really set up me for my career. I mean, it was, I don't know that we've ever done, I'm not going to say we, other people probably have, but like I've never done that much heavy maintenance on helicopters again. And I learned an incredible amount, because my next assignment after this, I was a crew chief, so I wasn't doing a whole lot of maintenance. I was flying with the aircraft, which we're going to be getting to soon in a few episodes. So, so it really set up me through my leadership time when I was in charge of maintenance platoons to be successful in those positions, because I really had a lot of knowledge and experience, in that maintenance field. And that deployment really set me up with a whole lot of knowledge and success. And again, I'll tell you, if you haven't heard some of my earlier episodes, and or if you forgot, like, look, coming into this, I mean, I was not a good mechanic. This stuff wasn't natural to me. I was college educated. I'm smart. I can do that stuff. But excuse me. I wasn't good at it. I didn't have like the natural, mechanic ability. So a lot of it was just, I overthought a lot of it, and was like, I would make simple stuff too hard. So it was a pretty good, big learning curve for me. And, but became, decent at it enough to where I understood concepts and the, how long stuff took, and how to, read the book, and, all the other peripheral things that comes with, getting this one item done, meaning we have to get other people from other shops to help us, do this duty, get this aircraft fixed. So that really helped me when I became, a platoon sergeant and in the maintenance area. And I did that a couple times, so I could help set up the training calendar, training schedule, because I knew what they needed to know. And also when it came to working on the aircraft, I could help them develop, systems and processes that help. So yeah, this deployment really, really did set up a lot of those, opportunities for me to be successful later throughout my career. So yeah, I mean, so really, we worked through all that. I got to go home on R&R. I came back, and really, so the next episode is packing up and getting ready to come home from Iraq in March of 2004. So we've got to pack up all of our stuff. We've got to drive the 500 something miles from Camp Spiker all the way through Baghdad, all the way down to Kuwait. And there's a new thing called IEDs that are now out there. And we've got to get all of our vehicles and equipment down there safely. And so that's going to be my next episode with that. Plus coming home and seeing my wife and son and how we worked through those challenges and issues and enjoyment and fun, of being home again, and kind of, what happens through that. So thanks for hanging out again with me today and kind of catching back up with me and some of my early times in 2003. Those watching the YouTube, hopefully you enjoyed the pictures and the slideshow. And I'm going to have these pictures up on Facebook and Instagram as well. So you can, those of you that just listen to the show, you're more than welcome to go over there, and you can find me on Instagram at Miller's Military Moments as well. But you can always go to my website too, and millersmilitarymoments.com, and then you can get links to all the socials there. Soon, my website is going to be upgraded, and we're going to have places for pictures and some other things where I'm going to give shout outs to some of those veteran-owned businesses I've talked about in the past, and some of the other podcasts that are really awesome that I want y'all to check out if that's your thing. So, yeah, definitely check out the website if you really, that's the home base for all things content related for millersmilitarymoments.com. So I'm excited for the next episode. I've had a great time today sharing this episode with you all. And until next time, be safe out there, take care of each other, reach out to those that, need some help, may need your assistance, or just listen, show compassion, be kind to one another, and let's make our world just that much of a better place. All right, till next time, peace.